The Jacksonville Jaguars are once again at home to host the Pittsburgh Steelers as a part of their second game of a two-game home stint during the preseason here in 2022. And honestly, there's a lot of things to be very, very excited for. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence looked like someone that we expected the number one overall pick to be, someone that's been tagged as the next John Elway, Peyton Manning, someone like that. He looked like that. Obviously, the stat sheet didn't reflect it, but overall, he moved it down the field twice. And obviously, that third drive he was on, he was kind of a gimme with the turnover. But still, when you look at him, he was 6 of 12 for 95 and to score. And overall, I believe Doug Peterson said today that starters will be playing, and mainly the defense, into the second quarter. So I'm probably expecting him to probably play until about the 10-minute, the 7:30 mark, somewhere in there, somewhere in that range. And honestly, if Trevor Lawrence comes out of there 15, maybe 17 of 22 attempts, maybe 150 yards and a score, that is absolutely okay for me with Trevor Lawrence. Continuing to move the ball down the field like what he did last week against the Browns, just small things like that. That's all I need to see from Trevor Lawrence. And let's just get to DC healthy. Let's get to week 1. Let's play the Commanders. I don't care about this game against the Steelers, and I really don't care about the outcome of this game against the Falcons either coming up next week. His games are meaningless. Let's get to DC. Let's keep Trevor Lawrence healthy. That is objective number 1, but I still would love to see Trevor Lawrence move the ball down the field and just help this offense and show that this offense is a competent one and it's being led by someone that's not a total buffoon like it was in 2021, And then you got the running backs. Travis Etienne, I would love to see more of what we saw out of him last week. I'd love to see that quick burst that he has. I'd love to see, maybe him hitting the hole a little bit more. I said what I said last week about him being super patient and just we're going to have to eat some of the losses still. I would love to absolutely see him just house one. I know I'm being optimistic here, but obviously, wouldn't it just be amazing to see Travis Etienne take 160 yards? It would be incredible. It would be absolutely incredible. Obviously, he's going to be facing a much stiffer front seven if the Steelers do decide to play their starters. Obviously, Cameron Hayward's a 3-time All-Pro, and then they obviously have TJ Watt as well, who led the league in sacks last year. So this offense and Travis Etienne are going to have their hands full, to say the least, getting a lot of progress and getting the ball moving against this very formidable, I would say, Steelers defense. They're looking to be one of the sleeper picks as one of the best defenses in the National Football League. And then obviously, Snoop Connor, just keep doing what you're doing, man. You are the third running back on this depth chart. I don't think Rock Armstead and Mekhi Sargent are going to beat you out. Just keep doing you. You're a 5th-round rookie. The expectations for you are not high. So you really can't do anything to disappoint people because your expectations aren't that high. And then for Mekhi Sargent and then Raquel Armstead, that's honestly the battle for the 4th spot right now. And it's one of the more underlying battles that's still going on in training camp. And with Mekhi Sargent's performance against the Cleveland Browns, I'm honestly not expecting any more changes with the running back depth chart unless Mekhi Sargent just comes out and just has an insane game and just blows everyone out of the water, and he takes one to the house, and he just does things that we aren't expecting anyone that low in the depth chart to do, to even re-enter his name into the conversation with Rock Armstead as the potential 4th running back if they do decide to carry 4 into week 1. And then you've got the wide receivers. Zay Jones, is he going to continue to look like they have this magical connection, him and Trevor Lawrence? Because to this point, through the training camp highlight videos, through everything we saw throughout the summer with them, and then on top of what we saw with the game against the Browns, it looks like these two are a match made in heaven. And there are already people comparing them. I'm not going to yet, but there are people saying that, my goodness, we have just found the next Jimmy Smith. We have just found the next guy that was a super late bloomer in his career. He goes to his 3rd team, and then out of nowhere, he is the star in the league. Did we find that? I'm going to need to see it for a length of time during the regular season. But man, I understand why the rumblings are there. I'll say that. I understand why the optimism's there, because he looks spectacular. Now, you look at someone like Christian Kirk. Is he going to be playing in this game? I hope he personally does. We didn't get to see him against the Browns last week due to that rolled ankle in training camp. But, he's had the week to sit on. He's had the week to rest on it. I believe he's been a full participant in camp, so that's not a big issue there. And then overall, let's just see what he looks like playing with the starting 11. Are they going to roll out into a 3 wide receiver technique? What are they going to have on the field? I'm very excited to see what Christian Kirk looks like for this offense. And then Marvin Jones, didn't do a whole lot. I'm not even sure if he played. Let me say that. I'm not even sure if he played in the game against the Browns. I believe he did. But still, when that question's coming up, it's like the Taven Bryan question. Oh God, where's Taven Bryan? Did he even play? He's not on the stat sheet. Where is Taven Bryan? I feel like that was the thing for Marvin Jones. Obviously, it was a preseason game. I'm not going to get too worked up about that. But I'd like to see him make an appearance. Chris Manhertz made an appearance last week. Can we see Marvin Jones make an appearance? And then overall, it's Laviska Shenault and then Laquan Treadwell. They're kind of vying for that fourth wide receiver spot somewhere in there. And then obviously Agnew's the sixth one. I'm not expecting to see Agnew back. It's okay if I don't see Agnew back. I don't need to see the gadget guy playing in a meaningless preseason game. But I would really like to see potentially Laviska Shenault, Laquan Treadwell kind of battle for that fourth wide receiver spot. Because, that is a big bump on the depth chart, whether you're Laquan Treadwell going up or you're Laviska Shenault continuing to go down. That's a big thing to watch for right there. And it's something that, it's kind of quietly going undersaid. Is Laviska just put in as the fourth, regardless of what Treadwell does? That's another thing to potentially think about overall. But then you have the tight ends as well. You've got Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram is someone that came into Jacksonville with a drop issue that was well touted, and then the second he dropped the pass in training camp, and there are a couple of reporters put out a video on Twitter about it, all hell broke loose, and we had beat reporters having thousands and thousands and thousands of impressions and retweets on videos because of Evan Ingram dropping him, with Giants fans going, "We told you. Why'd you sign him? You shouldn't have signed him. We told you he had a drop problem." This would be a great game to just absolutely shut them up. Let him play a quarter and a half, play 2 quarters, don't have a drop, shut the naysayers up. Evan Ingram doesn't have this drop issue. We can move on from it. And then obviously Chris Manhertz and Dan Arnold. Dan Arnold, I've equated him to Cam Robinson. We know what they are. I don't need to see them play a bunch, and I don't need to see a bunch of production from them. They are who we thought they were, and that's okay. So Dan Arnold, cool. And then what are we going to see out of Chris Manhertz? We saw him get more involved than Dan Arnold did. He actually caught a pass against the Browns. Dan Arnold didn't. Obviously, it was 1 for 10 yards, but still, Chris Manhertz caught a pass. And so that is absolutely something to look forward to. How do they use Chris Manhertz? How does Luke Farrell look as well? 2 guys that really weren't super predominantly talked about in the passing game throughout the summer. But then Luke Farrell had a hell of a Hall of Fame game, and Chris Manhertz appears to be more involved in the passing game than any of us originally thought. Now, Cam Robinson, I already talked about him. Get out of the game, do your job, go shower, enjoy your night. That's pretty much and it's the same thing for Brandon Sheriff too. We know what they are, and they are what we think they are until they show us that they're not that anymore. Now, the one big thing I want to point out here is Ben Bartch might be starting this game. He's been getting a lot of work with the ones this week in camp. Obviously, Tyler Shatley started last week. Is that a sign that Fortner is feeling more comfortable at the center position? He no longer needs the veteran Shatley next to him. That could be a sign that that Fortner's looking very good. That's another little caveat to that. But then Ben Bartch, how is he going to look? Obviously, he played a good amount of snaps last year at the right guard spot. Obviously, going to be playing left guard this year. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see how that interior works now that it's potentially Bartch in that spot and not Shatley. And then on the opposite side of the line, you have the right tackle spot, which is still the most heavily contested battle throughout this training camp. You have Jawan Taylor, who is still appearing to be the starter by all accounts. He's been getting the initial reps with the ones, and he started the game last week against the Browns. So then you have Walker Little, on the other hand, who is probably the person Jaguar fans want to see be the starting right tackle. I feel like a lot of Jaguar fans are just fed up and tired of seeing Jawan Taylor be the starting right tackle for this game, or for this team, rather. And so if Walker Little does end up getting the nod, incredible. I know a lot of Jaguar fans are going to be happy. But at the end of the day, I do feel like this is one hell of a competition, and the Jaguars are going to be getting the best right tackle they can that is on this roster for them to play in that spot. Now for the defensive line, this is a defensive line that was getting really good pressure against the Cleveland Browns offensive line. Obviously, Joe Bitonio was not playing in that game, but Jedrick Wills was. Jedrick Wills is their starting left tackle. And Travon Walker consistently pushed him into the lap of Deshaun Watson, and it had him to the point where an established left tackle in the game is having to hold on for dear life against a guy that is a first-round draft pick. He is the first overall draft pick, and someone that has said he is not a polished pass rusher. He is nothing. He's just a freak of nature that's super athletic. But he was absolutely manhandling Jedrick Wills. So it was really nice to see that. And then on top of that, Josh Allen was also having success on the other side. And then on the interior, Devon Hamilton was having success. Fatukasi was having success. Arden Key was lining up on the inside and actually getting some push. He was standing up on the inside and getting some push. So there was a lot of nice things to see against that. But now the downside for this is that they're going up against an offensive line with the Pittsburgh Steelers that last week when the Steelers played the Seahawks, that offensive line almost averaged 7 yards a rusher. That's a hell of a thing to have. And what kind of success are the Jaguars going to have against an offensive line like that after what we saw up in Canton, where it seemed like the Vegas Raiders were doing anything and everything they wanted to do on the ground? It seemed like Josh Jacobs had any hole he wanted to pick on that offensive line in the Hall of Fame game. So what is it going to look like for this defensive line? You know, Roy Robertson Harris showed some nice things as well. So that's going to be a huge thing to watch for, is what does this defensive line look like, just kind of with gap control, and then also just stopping the run as a whole. Because I don't know if Najee Harris is going to be playing in this game, but hell, if he is, that's going to be a big test for the Jaguars. It's going to be their, honestly, as a unit, it's going to be their first big test of a running back that they could potentially see. And then for the linebackers, I think it's one of the biggest tasks they're going to ask a position group to do is handle this run game. You know, obviously Foye Oluokun looked very comfortably. He has received a bunch of praise as just kind of like a field general for that defense from all sorts of Jaguars coaching staff members. And then even when you watch the game, he looks incredibly comfortable. The defense is playing well in front of him and also behind him. And then whenever you look at who is going to be his backup, who is honestly probably just the way Tyler Shatley is the interior backup for the offensive line, I feel like Chad Muma is being looked at by the Jaguars as the interior inside linebacker, I should say. Because while Devin Lloyd has been out, Chad Muma's been playing in his spot. And then once Foye Oluokun leaves the game, Chad Muma throws the green dot on and then plays in that role. So he's kind of I feel like he's being cross-trained a little bit with the green dot and then also playing in the Devin Lloyd role in the defense. So what are they going to do? How are they going to handle this leading the defense and things like that against an offense that has a bunch of weapons and that against an offense that did very, very well in their first preseason game? Obviously, it's a preseason game. I'm going to keep reiterating that. It's a preseason game. The result doesn't matter, but we still want to see them look good. So, and then for the corners as well, like I talked about with the front seven having a huge task, the corners by far have the biggest task if the Steelers do play their starters. Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool are two very good wide receivers. There's no doubting that. And then you add someone like George Pickens, who is arguably one of the better wide receivers in the draft class if it hadn't been just for a litany of issues that were seen throughout the draft process with him. He's probably up there with Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, and things like that. And then on top of that, you're adding someone in Najee Harris who has the potential to come out of the backfield and catch passes. And then on top of that, you have a quarterback in Kenny Pickett that had a huge first game. I think he had like 2-3 incompletions in his first game for the Steelers. So you're adding all of that up. There's going to be probably an air raid against this Jaguars defense if they're still in when the Steelers bring in Kenny Pickett, whether it's Mitchell Trubisky, whoever it is. The Jaguars secondary is absolutely going to get worked out. You know, Rayshon Jenkins had the forced fumble last week, and he's been really showing out throughout training camp for this Jaguars secondary. And then Andre Sisco, what is he going to look like throughout camp? You know, obviously he laid the boom on Travis Etienne that first day in full contact. So it's going to be really exciting to see what the Jaguars secondary has for this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. And then you have Ryan Santoso. Ryan Santoso is now the only Jaguar kicker that's on the roster, so it's safe to say that he's probably going to be the Jaguars kicker come week 1 up in Washington. So there's that. If the Jaguars win, incredible. I'm going to be taking my son to his first Jaguars game. You know, big old 6 months old, going to the Jaguar game, going to throw some headphones on him, and he's going to have a great time. I'm going to have a great time as a diehard Jaguar fan myself. So, but thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe and go Jaguars.